Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Today, I'm going to be discussing one of the really interesting trends that has actually permeated the entirety of the superhero world, but is missing something that's very key. And, that's pretty much an Arrow game, a game about the Green Arrow. Now, when the Green Arrow TV show came out, one of the very strong points that it had in terms of season 1 and I think even season 2 was how strong the story was. In fact, I necessarily did not care much about the Green Arrow until I saw the show and I started watching it and I was like, man, the writing is actually pretty good. Now, needless to say that down the road, the show eventually took a turn that could not keep me anymore. So I kind of moved away. But, if you look at the way DC characters have been, jumbled up together, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to say, a character like the Green Arrow being very dynamic, very close to, Batman and Superman, even in terms of, TV shows, animated series. If you look at even Smallville, you're going to see some, Green Arrow in there. If you look at some of the Batman animated series, you see some Green Arrow in there. He's in the mix of all of that stuff. He's also another billionaire because for some reason DC likes billionaires. You have Lex Luthor, you have Oliver Queen, and then you have Bruce Wayne. But he's one of those billionaires. And he has a whole lot of reach and he's able to do a lot of cool stuff in terms of R&D and developing, the strength to be able to fight, whether it be a crime or corruption or whatever, to make himself a character of that sort. Now, the Arrow has been, featured in a whole host of games, like, from old Justice League games, to the Injustice fighting games, to DC Universe Online. But I think a DC, game that is centered around the Arrow himself, in terms of maybe an open or a semi-open world, is actually something that might be very valuable for gamers. And the reason I say that is because the Arrow is probably going to serve and playing a role like Batman already does, having all what he needs and then giving him a strong story. Now, if you give him a strong story, you're definitely going to be able to get gamers on board. And then in terms of gameplay, it's not even going to be, a matter of what do we do for gameplay. It's just going to be a matter of how we even, where do we even pull from in terms of the wealth of stuff that Arrow has. It's not like he's lacking in any sense. You can give him a very strong, skill tree for him to be able to develop. And there are other games that have actually done a lot of good bow and arrow type shooting in terms of their protagonist. Horizon Zero Dawn was one game that did very well, with Aloy being, the protagonist, and she primarily ran around with a bow, had a skill tree, and also had like a little wheel that could change in between battle and all that stuff. I'm not saying that the Arrow game should copy that, but there are already, games that have established themselves around building open worlds that are beautiful, very eye-catching, and with solid gameplay mechanics. In terms of Arrow, he's probably not going to be getting an open world like Horizon Zero Dawn where he's running after cybernetic dinosaurs, but in his case he'll probably be getting something that is within an urban area, in terms of his own story and his own lore. You're going to have him actually dealing with issues in that in that area and all that. And in terms of, the things that make a game very strong, like if you look at Arkham Origins, one of the things that made that story very, very solid was the internal conflict and the external conflict that Bruce Wayne faced. He was very new to the game. And, the writers were able to take that and harness it in different ways and give us a Bruce Wayne that we had never seen before. Now, in this case, the Arrow has not necessarily had any video game before. So the first to jump on this project will be the people who will form this character. So they already have somewhat of a blank slate in the video game aspect of creating the Arrow the way that they want him to be, in what area of his life he's going to be. They can start him from, when he's a spoiled rich brat, and just like the TV show, which made a whole lot of I would say, sense in how to start that character, there's nothing wrong in doing that in a video game. Now, putting their own spin on it, but at least bringing it to the place where players can say, okay, we're going to start with a teenager who, not a teenager, but with a young man who's lost and finds himself in a place where he has to grow and his character has got to be shapened. This is definitely something that people can rally around. Fight mechanics for hand-to-hand melee combat. The roadmap is there from another Warner Brothers game, which is Mad Max. So something that is maybe even better than Mad Max, more polished, can even be done in today's day and age with the way, gaming is advancing. A lot of the mocap is advancing. They can do a lot of things like that. And then when it comes to other characters that are in the Arrowverse, I mean, not just to talk about Superman and talk about Lex Luthor and talk about Batman, which they don't even need to touch these characters because they're kind of on the high level. There are a lot of villains that actually, transcend and swing through Gotham and Oliver Quinn's own world, and he can tackle these villains that we are very, very aware of. Villains like Gorilla Grodd, Cheetah, a lot of these characters that you see in terms of the the villain and the super villainy, they can always be, people that the Arrow can set his sights upon. And then there also can be multiple enemies that are in his own area. Maybe they're trying to take him out or something similar of an Arkham origin story that kind of sees him going against different enemies and meet, their enemies and meeting them for the first time. So imagine like a beginning story of Cheetah being done in like a video game, an origin story of maybe even Deathstroke even showing up in a game where Oliver Quinn will probably have to fight the Deathstroke maybe for the first time he tries to fight him. It's a thing where he gets beaten because he doesn't really know what's going on. Deathstroke could even be the main boss of this game, and I think that way we're going to see something pretty cool in terms of how an Arrow game works. So there's so many aspects that can be pulled from in terms of story, so many aspects that can be pulled from in terms of combat, in the sense of his gadgetry. That's another really cool place that I feel like can also make for some really unique progression systems, because if you watch, maybe there's the animated series of Batman and I think Oliver Queen fighting against all these animal-like bosses, where you see Gorilla Grodd and Cheetah and all the, I think Man-Bat's probably part of them. And one of the most unique aspects of these animated series is they go all out. So they show you like a lot of the Arrow's, arsenal. He's got different kinds of bows. And I feel like those are things that you can, if you're playing a game like this is me just playing in my head, you can unlock these things as you're going. So, you have arrows that can do all kinds of, fun stuff and can help you in different scenarios. If they want, they can even, make it in a way where he can traverse the open world in much more effective ways as you are beginning to progress and get better and stronger, getting more XP, unlocking stuff, maybe even give you the possibility to be able to do some stealth missions with arrows that can actually, pop and, let out some sleep inducing stuff in there. Maybe, you're finding, you're looking for a way to infiltrate somewhere. They're armed guards who are armed with much more lethal weapons than him, and he's got to outthink them and outsmart them. So you can just start to see different missions even build and develop in your mind on how this game is actually going to work, because I think this is a legitimate idea that needs to be harnessed and captured by somebody. So, I think the Arrow might be due, especially now that the TV show kind of lost, in a sense, the interest that was there initially when it started. I think one way they can actually rejuvenate this character is to maybe bring it into the video game, or bring him into the video game world, and let gamers get their hands on what this character is about. Maybe give that to a studio. Warner Brothers or DC Games can give this to one of their studios that is just waiting and, ready to be able to take on a project. Maybe their hands are full now, but, they have a lot of, proxy studios that can work on a game like this, and they have a lot of assets that they can use. I mean, this is Warner Brothers that has everything from a Nemesis system all the way through, melee systems that are some of the better melee systems in adventure games, even open world settings that are there that can work for something like this. I just feel like, the Green Arrow being confined to fighting games doesn't necessarily do the character much justice. The character is so dynamic, and I didn't appreciate this from knowing about the Green Arrow for so many years until I watched the Arrow TV show. The Arrow TV show was also kind of like the big brother of the Flash TV show as well. And, the Arrowverse just started to grow because of how popular this was. So I think not bringing the Arrow into a video game, maybe even starting to introduce him in a cameo-like way in some other DC universe titles other than a fighting game, might be something that could work. It's not going to be difficult, in my opinion anyways, for a gifted and talented studio to write a 25 to 30 hour campaign for a character like him, to develop fight styles for a character like him that is unique. He fights very dynamically. That's one of the really cool things about him. He's very acrobatic and athletic. Oliver Queen is supposedly kind of young, and so I feel like his fight style is definitely going to be enjoyable for people to play through. So that's pretty much my video. I just decided to share a few ideas on this. I thought, this is definitely an interesting character, and I'm not a good Injustice 2 player, but he's one of those characters that just kind of stuck out to me, and I was able to play a little bit of, and, I felt like he was easier to use. So kind of struck me that way, and I thought I'll share my thoughts with you guys. So let me hear what you think in the comment section. I want to know how you guys think an Arrow game can actually be implemented. Share your ideas. We'll keep the conversation going. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this, and I guess I'll see you in my next video. Peace out.